History often immortalizes certain individuals as symbols of tragedy and injustice, burdened with the weight of collective misfortune. One such figure is Robert Hubert, a French watchmaker from Rouen, whose name became tragically linked to one of London's greatest disasters, the Great Fire of 1666. Despite a bizarre confession riddled with inconsistencies, Hubert was condemned as the scapegoat for a devastating calamity that transformed the city. On the 2nd of September 1666, a fire broke out in Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane. Fueled by the densely packed wooden buildings and strong easterly winds, the flames spread rapidly, consuming nearly 80% of London's old city by the time it was extinguished on September 6th. The destruction was staggering. 13,200 homes, 87 parish churches, and landmarks such as St. Paul's Cathedral were reduced to ash. Amid the devastation, a desperate search for someone to blame began, and Robert Hubert became the unfortunate target. As panic and suspicion gripped the city, Hubert found himself caught in the crosshairs. He confessed to starting the fire, but his admission was perplexing. Initially, he claimed to have ignited a blaze in Westminster, though the fire never reached that area. Revising his account, Hubert alleged he threw a fire grenade through a window at Farriner's bakery, the origin of the inferno. Despite glaring impossibilities, his tale was accepted by authorities eager to provide answers to the distraught public. Hubert's story grew even more improbable as he claimed to have accomplices who sabotaged firefighting efforts by cutting off water supplies. He described himself as a French spy and an agent of the Pope, feeding into the widespread anti-Catholic and anti-foreign sentiments of the time. Although riddled with contradictions, his confession served as a convenient narrative in a city desperate for closure. Scrutiny of Hubert's confession revealed insurmountable flaws. Most damningly, he had not even arrived in England when the fire started. A captain of the Swedish ship Maid of Stockholm later testified that Hubert disembarked in London 2 days after the blaze began. Furthermore, Hubert had no familiarity with Farriner's bakery and was physically incapable of throwing a fire grenade due to his disabilities. His confession raised suspicions of mental instability or coercion under duress. Despite these inconsistencies, Hubert faced trial. Many observers doubted his guilt, viewing him as a vulnerable man manipulated into confessing. Contemporary accounts described him as a poor, distracted wretch who sought death as an escape. Nonetheless, Hubert was convicted and executed on October 27, 1666. Even in death, his suffering continued. An enraged mob mutilated his body on the way to dissection, a grim testament to the public's misplaced fury. Hubert's execution was a reflection of the era's xenophobia and religious tensions. During the Second Anglo-Dutch War, foreigners, especially the French, were easy targets for suspicion. Anti-Catholic sentiment ran high, with the monument to the Great Fire erected in 1668 explicitly blaming the disaster on the treachery and malice of the popish faction. In such a climate, Hubert's dubious guilt was all too easily accepted. In 1667, cooler heads prevailed, and the fire was officially attributed to natural causes, a combination of dry weather, strong winds, and human negligence. The rush to judgment that led to Hubert's execution was later recognized as a tragic miscarriage of justice, highlighting society's tendency to seek scapegoats in times of crisis. Over time, London rebuilt itself, expanding into the thriving metropolis it is today. Yet the story of Robert Hubert remains a poignant reminder of the dangers of hysteria and the perils of scapegoating. His unjust fate underscores the need for fairness, thorough investigation, and compassion, especially in the face of overwhelming fear and uncertainty. The tale of Robert Hubert, like the Great Fire itself, endures as a symbol of humanity's dual capacity for cruelty and resilience. As we reflect on this dark chapter in history, let us remember the lessons it teaches us about justice, truth, and the human spirit's ability to rise from the ashes of devastation.